Ego stood in front of the full-length mirror in her spacious bedroom in her Lekki mansion, adjusting the shimmery silver lace dress that hugged her every curve. Tonight was her 9th, her 35th birthday. It wasn't just about marking her age, but celebrating the life she had built. From her humble beginnings in Aba, she had climbed the corporate ladder to become a successful entrepreneur. She had also married Chigozie, the charming, wealthy man who had swept her off her feet 10 years ago. The party was set in the mansion's grand living room, transformed into an elegant event space. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above, and stunning floral arrangements adorned every corner. Her closest friends, family, and even some prominent associates were invited to celebrate with her. Ego had ensured every detail was perfect, down to the asoebi fabric for the guests. Yet, something tugged at her mind. Chigozie had been distant lately. His affection, once overwhelming, now felt lukewarm. She dismissed it as stress from his numerous business ventures, or perhaps midlife crisis. But tonight, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Ego, you look absolutely stunning, her best friend Kemi gushed as she entered the room. Ego turned, smiling faintly. Thank you, Kemi. Tonight must be perfect. Kemi stepped closer, her voice dropping. Has Chigozie shown up? It is getting late. Ego frowned, glancing at her phone for the umpteenth time. No message from Chigozie. He promised he'll be here. Maybe traffic held him up. Kemi gave her a concerned look, but decided not to press further. Come on, let's get you downstairs. You are the celebrant. As Ego descended the marble staircase, applause erupted. She smiled warmly, scanning the room for Chigozie. He was nowhere to be found. Suppressing her disappointment, she graciously mingled with her guests. An hour passed, then another. The party was lively, yet Ego's anxiety grew. Where was Chigozie? Finally, the front doors opened and Chigozie stepped in. His tall frame and well-tailored suit sparkling across the lights from the hallway. Relief washed over Ego, but it quickly turned to confusion. Chigozie wasn't alone. By his side was Ifeoma, their housekeeper. Ifeoma wore a sleek black gown that accentuated her figure. Her braids styled elegantly. She looked out of place among the elite crowd, but what unsettled Ego the most was the way Chigozie held Ifeoma's arm like she was the one being celebrated. Whispers spread like wildfire. Ego forced herself to remain composed, although unease churned in her stomach. Chigozie approached, his expression unreadable. Ego, he said loudly, capturing everyone's attention. We need to talk. Ego looked confused. What's going on, Chigozie? Why is Ifeoma here? Without preamble, he pulled out an envelope from his suit pocket and handed it over to her. Read it. Confused, Ego opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were divorce papers. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Divorce? She whispered, looking up at him. You are doing this now? Right here? In the presence of our guests? Chigozie didn't flinch. Yes, Ego, he said. It is over. Ifeoma and I, we are getting married. Gasps echoed around the room. Ego felt her world shatter. She searched his face for any sign that this was a joke, but his expression was cold. Married? To her? Ego's voice was barely audible. Chigozie nodded. I've been with Ifeoma for a while now. She is who I want. Ego struggled to remain uptight, her chest tightening. She wanted to scream, cry, and demand answers, but all she could manage to say was, why? You've changed, Ego, Chigozie said bluntly. You are all about your business, your image. Ifeoma makes me feel alive. Tears threatened to fall, but Ego refused to break down in front of the crowd. Taking a deep breath, she straightened her shoulders. If that is what you want, Chigozie, you can have it. I won't stop you. Chigozie looked surprised, but said nothing as Ego turned and left the room. Once out of sight, she collapsed onto the staircase, tears streaming down her face. Kemi rushed to her, pulling her into a tight embrace. Ego, I am so sorry. I can't believe this. Ego shook her head, her birthday dress soaked in tears. He is gone, Kemi. He left me. Kemi held her tighter. You rise above this, Ego. You are stronger than you know. But in that moment, Ego couldn't see a future beyond the pain. All she knew was that the life she had built with Chigozie was over and she was alone. The days that followed Chigozie's brutal betrayal were a blur of pain and confusion for Ego. Blogs had a field day with headlines like "Wealthy Lagos Mugul dumps wife for housekeeper at birthday party." Sympathy messages flooded her phone, but they only deepened her humiliation. She avoided the world, staying locked in her mansion with Kemi by her side. Memories of Chigozie haunted her, his laughter, his promises, their shared dreams. Now it was all gone, replaced by photos of him and Ifeoma flaunting their love on social media. Pictures of them vacationing on luxury yachts, attending high society events, and dining at five-star restaurants filled Ego's newsfeed, adding insult to her injury. Chigozie felt unbothered by the destruction he had caused in her life. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Ego found the strength to leave the mansion. She called the lawyer and signed the divorce papers, officially ending the 10 years of her marriage. She didn't care about the financial settlement. What was money compared to the loss of her dignity, her heart? Her friends, Kemi in particular, urged her to fight for what she deserved, but Ego was too exhausted to fight anymore. She just wanted to move on. She moved out of the mansion, leaving it to Chigozie and Ifeoma, and rented a small but cozy apartment in the city. For a while, she lived in isolation, throwing herself into her work, trying to forget the man who had abandoned her so easily. But forgetting wasn't as easy as she hoped. While Ego's life descended into chaos, Chigozie's life soared. At least it appeared that way. On the surface, everything seemed perfect. His new relationship with Ifeoma was a whirlwind of passion, luxury, and indulgence. They traveled the world, spent weekends in exotic locations, and attended glamorous events that made them the talk of the town. Chigozie was proud of his choice, confident that leaving Ego was the best decision he had ever made. Ifeoma was everything Ego no longer was: fun, carefree, and always eager to please. She made him feel young again, alive in ways he hadn't felt in years. Ego, with her ambitions and focus on her career, had grown distant. Ifeoma was different. She showered him with attention and admiration, but underneath the veneer of perfection, things weren't quite as harmonious as they seemed. Ifeoma's love for luxury began to weigh on Chigozie's finances. She was constantly asking for more jewelry, more clothes, more vacations, more everything. At first, Chigozie didn't mind. He had more than enough to keep her happy, and spending on her made him feel more powerful, in control. Soon, Ifeoma's request became more than just material. She began suggesting that Chigozie sign over assets to her name, houses, investments, even his business. She wanted to feel secure. She told him, She needed to know that their love was real and lasting. Chigozie, still basking in his love for her, saw no harm in her request. He trusted her completely, believing she was the woman who would be by his side for the rest of his life. It started with small things, an investment property here, a bank account there, but over time, Chigozie signed more and more over to Ifeoma until she had total control over nearly everything he owned. And while Chigozie had always prided himself on his business acumen, in love, he was blind, very blind. Ifeoma played her role perfectly, sweet, innocent, and doting. She made Chigozie feel like a king, even as she slowly dismantled the empire he had built. The shift came suddenly. One morning, Chigozie woke up to see Ifeoma already up, sitting at the kitchen table, sipping coffee in her designer robe. Her demeanor was colder than usual, her tone sharp. "We need to talk," she said, setting her cup of coffee down. Chigozie, still grudgy, rubbed his eyes and sat across from her. "What is wrong?" Ifeoma sighed, her expression turning cold. "I think it is time we ended this." Chigozie blinked, confused. "Ended what?" "Us," she said simply, as though it were the most obvious thing in the world. "This relationship, it has run its course." The words hit Chigozie like a truck. "What are you talking about? We are engaged." Ifeoma laughed. "That was fun while it lasted, but I think it's time for me to move on to greater things." Panic surged through Chigozie. "Move on? What do you mean? We've built a life together." Ifeoma raised an eyebrow, amusement flickering in her eyes. "I built a life, Chigozie. You just gave it to me." His heart began to race. "What are you talking about?" "I own everything now," she said casually, examining her manicured nails. "The houses, the businesses, the accounts. You signed it all over to me, remember?" Chigozie's blood ran cold. "That's impossible. I didn't." "Yes, you did," she interrupted, pulling a stack of papers from her bag and tossing them onto the table. "You signed everything. It's all legal and it's all mine." Chigozie stared at the papers, disbelief washing over him. He snatched them up and scanned the documents, his heart sinking deeper with each page. It was all there, every asset, every business, every penny, all of it transferred to Ifeoma, and worse, every signature was his. How could you do this?" he whispered, his voice breaking. Ifeoma smiled coldly. "Because I could. You were a fool, Chigozie. You thought you could replace your wife with me and everything would be perfect, but I was never interested in you. I was interested in your money." Chigozie's world began to collapse. He had given everything to her, trusted her completely, and now he had nothing. "You can't do this," he stammered, his voice shaking with desperation. "I'll take you to court. You will do no such thing." Ifeoma interrupted, standing up and grabbing her bag. "Everything was done legally, Chigozie. You signed the papers. There is no going back." Chigozie sat in stunned silence as Ifeoma walked out of the house, without a backward glance. In that moment, he realized just how thoroughly she had played him. The woman he had left everything for had stripped him of everything he had, and he was powerless to stop her. He was ruined. The fallout from Ifeoma's betrayal was swift and brutal. Chigozie's accounts were drained, his properties gone, and his once thriving business now under Ifeoma's control. He had nothing, no money, no home, and no one to turn to. His friends, who had warned him against rushing into a relationship with Ifeoma, abandoned him. They had little sympathy, knowing he brought this upon himself. Even his family, who had stood by him in the past, distanced themselves, ashamed of his choices. Chigozie was forced to sell whatever belongings he had and moved into a cramped one-room apartment in a local part of the city. The man, who once lived in a sprawling mansion in a highbrow area, now struggled to survive, taking odd jobs just to make ends meet. His fall from grace was absolute. With no other options, Chigozie applied for a job as a janitor at a large firm in Victoria Island. The work was grueling and humiliating, but it was his only choice of income. Each day, he cleaned offices filled with wealthy executives, scrubbing floors and emptying trash cans, painfully aware he once lived that life. The irony was unbearable. What Chigozie didn't know was that his path was about to cross with someone from his past, someone whose life had taken a very different turn. Weeks turned into months, and Chigozie's new life as a janitor was nothing short of soul-crushing. He had gone from holding board meetings to cleaning floors in offices much like the ones he used to run. The few people who recognized him avoided eye contact, but he could feel their judgmental stares and whispers. Every night, Chigozie returned to his dingy apartment, haunted by his choices that led him here. Memories of Ifeoma walking away with his fortune, and of Ego, his ex-wife, who he had betrayed, filled his mind. Regret consumed him, but there was no undoing of the past. One evening, while cleaning the executive floor of the skyscraper, he noticed the nameplate on an office door, Ego Okonkwo, CEO. His heart stopped. He stood there, frozen in disbelief. Could it really be? Could his ex-wife, the woman he humiliated and left, be the CEO of this company? Chigozie's hand trembled as he finished cleaning, his thoughts racing. He remembered Ego's ambition and drive when they were married. She had always been determined and capable, but after their divorce, he assumed she would struggle. The idea that she had risen so far stunned him. That night, Chigozie couldn't sleep. Thought of Ego filled his mind. She had rebuilt her life and soared, while he had fallen to the bottom. The roles were reversed in a way he couldn't have imagined. The next day, Chigozie decided to confront her. He had no idea what to say, but he needed to apologize. Late in the evening, after most executives had left, he waited by the elevator bank on Ego's door, clutching his cleaning supplies. His heart raced as the elevator doors opened, and there she was, Ego, looking poised and confident. She hadn't changed much, though she carried herself with a strength that wasn't there before. She wore a crepe Ankara blazer and skirt. When her gaze fell on Chigozie, her steps faltered. Her eyes widened momentarily before her expression turned cold. Chigozie, she said flatly, her voice devoid of emotion. What are you doing here? Chigozie swallowed hard, his shame rising. I work here as a janitor. Silence hung between them as Ego absorbed his words. Her face remained impassive, but her eyes flickered with something, pity or disdain. He wasn't sure. I see, she finally said. Well, it is good to see you found a job. The sarcasm in her voice stung. Chigozie expected anger, but her indifference hurt more. He stepped forward, desperate to explain. Ego, please, he began, his voice cracking. I need to apologize. What I did to you was wrong. I know that now. I have lost everything because of my mistakes. I am begging you to forgive me. Ego stared at him for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then, with a sigh, she crossed her arms. Do you think forgiveness changes anything, Chigozie? She asked, her tone cold. Do you think your apology erases what you did? You humiliated me, destroyed our marriage, and left me for another woman. Now that everything has fallen apart, you want forgiveness. For what? To erase your guilt? Chigozie's shoulders slumped, tears pooling in his eyes. I was blind, Ego. I didn't appreciate you. I know that now. I am not asking for anything, but a chance to make things right. Ego shook her head, her expression softening momentarily before hardening again. You can't make things right, Chigozie. What is done is done. I've moved on, and I don't need your apologies. Her words shattered him. He nodded, wiping his tears. I understand. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Ego's expression didn't change. I have heard you. Now, move on, she said. Without another word, she turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, broken. In the month that followed, Chigozie realized the full weight of Ego's words. She had moved on and built an empire. Meanwhile, he remained at the bottom, haunted by the life he had thrown away. Ego flourished. She expanded her company and became a household name. Though their brief encounter stirred up old memories, she refused to dwell on the past. Her focus was on the future, one she had built through resilience and determination. As she stood in her office, overlooking the Lagos skyline, Ego smiled. She had survived and thrived. There was no turning back. The future was hers. That Saturday, Ego found herself at the gala, surrounded by Lagos elite. The hall was filled with the scent of fresh flowers, expensive perfumes, and the low hum of conversation. She had chosen a sleek black gown for the occasion, understated but elegant. As she entered the room with Kemi by her side, heads turned, but Ego paid little attention. She was used to the attention by now. The evening progressed smoothly with speeches, auctions, and a lavish dinner. Ego found herself mingling with various business leaders, politicians, and philanthropists, all eager to speak with her. But it wasn't until later in the night, as she stood by the bar, that she met someone who would change everything. Excuse me, came a voice from behind her. Ego turned to see a tall man dressed in a tuxedo, his dark eyes warm and kind. He smiled, holding out a hand. I'm Femi. Ego smiled politely, shaking his hand. I'm Ego, she replied. I know who you are, Femi said, a hint of amusement in his tone. You are the woman everyone here is talking about. The brilliant CEO who built her empire from scratch. Ego raised an eyebrow, intrigued but cautious. I'm sure people have exaggerated. Maybe, Femi replied, still smiling, but I've followed your career for a while. I admire what you've done. It's not easy to rise from the kind of challenges you have faced. His words caught Ego off guard. There was something genuine about him, something that made her feel at ease. They spent the rest of the evening talking, and for the first time in a long while, Ego found herself enjoying the company of a man. Femi wasn't like the others she had met at events. He wasn't trying to impress her or make a business connection. He was simply interested in her, the woman, not the CEO. In the weeks that followed, Ego and Femi grew closer. They went on several dates, sharing dinners at quiet restaurants and long walks. Femi was kind, thoughtful, and attentive in ways Ego hadn't experienced in years. There was no rush between them, no grand declarations of love, just a slow, steady connection that felt real. Femi wasn't part of the high-powered corporate world Ego lived in. He was a successful architect who preferred designing homes and buildings. One evening, after a quiet dinner at Ego's penthouse, Femi turned to her with a question she hadn't been expecting. Ego, he said softly, do you ever think about what it would be like to let go of everything for a while? Like, just take a break from the business, from the city. Ego blinked, taken aback. I've never really thought about it. My work is everything. It's what I've built my life around. Femi smiled gently. I know, and you've done incredible things, but sometimes we get so caught up in what we are building that we forget to live. What if, just for a while, you allowed yourself to step away, to enjoy life outside of work? Ego looked at him, unsure. The thought of stepping away from her company, even temporarily, seemed impossible. But deep down, she knew there was truth in what Femi was saying. She had built her company from the ground up, but she had also built walls around herself, walls that kept her safe but also isolated. I don't know, she admitted, her voice soft. It's hard for me to imagine letting go. Femi took her hand, his touch warm and reassuring. You don't have to decide now, but think about it. You deserve happiness, Ego, not just success. While Ego found herself slowly opening up to a new chapter in her life, Chigozie continued to spiral. His job as a janitor was his only source of stability, but it was a far cry from the life he had once known. Each day was a reminder of how he had fallen, and each encounter with Ego in her towering office building was a painful reminder of what he had lost. Months after their initial confrontation, Chigozie couldn't shake the feeling that he needed to make one last plea. He had tried to move on, tried to accept his fate, but the guilt and regret gnawed at him constantly. He couldn't bear the thought of never making things right with Ego, even if she never forgave him. One afternoon, as Ego was leaving the office, Chigozie mustered the courage to approach her once more. Ego, he called out, his voice trembling with desperation. She stopped, turning to face him. Her expression was calm, but there was a guardedness in her eyes. What is it, Chigozie? She asked, her tone weary. I need you to know that I'm truly sorry, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I know you've moved on, and I know I don't deserve anything from you, but I can't live with this weight on my conscience anymore. I was a terrible husband, and I hurt you in ways I can never undo. Please, Ego, please just forgive me. Ego stood in silence for a moment, her gaze steady. She had heard these words before, but this time, something was different. Chigozie wasn't the same man who had abandoned her years ago. He was broken, humbled, and clearly haunted by his past mistakes. But Ego had moved on. She had rebuilt her life without him, and she had found peace in knowing that she didn't need his forgiveness to heal. She had already forgiven herself, and that was enough. Chigozie, she said softly, I have forgiven you, but forgiveness doesn't mean things go back to the way they were. It doesn't mean I'll take you back or that we can start over. We can't. Too much has happened, and I have moved on. I've built a new life, and I'm happy. Chigozie's shoulders sagged. I understand, he whispered. I just needed to hear it. Ego gave him a small nod, her expression kind but resolute. I wish you the best, Chigozie. I really do, but this is where our story ends. With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Chigozie standing alone in the hallway. The final chapter of their shared history closed for good. Ego's life with Femi slowly blossomed into something deeper and more meaningful than she had ever expected. He encouraged her to find balance, to enjoy life outside of work, and to embrace the moments of quiet joy that had eluded her for so long. Eventually, Ego did something she never thought she would do. She took a leave of absence from her company. She entrusted her team to handle the day-to-day operations. With Femi by her side, she spent time traveling, exploring the world, and reconnecting with herself. For the first time in years, Ego allowed herself to let go. She no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. She had faced betrayal, heartbreak, and loss, but she had come out stronger, wiser, and more at peace than ever before. Her journey was far from over, but now she was finally living for herself, not for revenge, not for success, but for happiness. And in that, Ego found the peace she had been searching for all along. If you enjoyed the story, then I am certain that you will enjoy the next story showing on the screen right now. Please click on the thumbnail and watch the next story. Please support me by liking this video, share with your family and friends, and subscribe to my channel. See you in my next story. Bye.